Rally, sons of Notre Dame, sing her glory and sound her fame. Raise her gold and blue and cheer with voices true, rah-rah. For Notre Dame, you rah-rah-rah, we will fight in every game. Strong of heart and true to her name, we will never forget her and will cheer her ever loyal to Notre Dame. Here we are for Cheers and Steak for Monday, November 5th, 2018, and I'm psyched. You know, this weekend in South Bend, Indiana, Florida State comes to town. Yeah, not the Florida State of 25 years ago. That was a game of the century. Notre Dame was number 2, Florida State was number 1, and Notre Dame beat them. Yes, Notre Dame won the game of the century. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this weekend. Awesome. Cheer, cheer for Notre Dame. Wake up the echoes cheering her name. Send a volley cheer on high. Shake down the thunder from the thunder sky. Though the odds be great or small, oh, Notre Dame will win overall. While her loyal sons are marching onward to victory. And hopefully they will march onward to victory this weekend against Florida State. Notre Dame 9-0, ranked number 3 in the college football playoff rankings. Florida State, not so much. They're 4-5, But I'm telling you, 25 years ago, almost to the day. Back then it was November 13th, 1993. That Florida State team with Charlie Ward and Bobby Bowden, they were all big and bad coming in number 1. Notre Dame number 2. Notre Dame won the game. Barely at the end, 31-24. I was there. It was unbelievable. Right there in South Bend, Indiana, where I was born and raised. I was born in the same hospital, St. Joseph Hospital, that the great Gipper. Remember Win went for the Gipper? It was Ronald Reagan and all that. Newt Rockney. George Gipp. Yeah, he was the Gipper. He died in the same hospital I was born in, St. Joseph Hospital in South Bend, Indiana. I don't know what that means, but anyway. All my aunts and cousins and everybody else, they're all there in South Bend, Indiana, and have been through the years. And, I'll tell you, it's just nothing like a big game in South Bend. Not so much this weekend. Like I say, Florida State's not very good, 4-5, Notre Dame 9-0. And, Saturday night in South Bend, that's when the game is. It's going to be cold. Yes, it might even snow. The high is supposed to be 34 in South Bend on Saturday night. The high in Tallahassee, where Florida State is from, is supposed to be 66 on Saturdays, this coming Saturday. So I think Notre Dame's got a little bit of an advantage. And by game time, it could be down to 26 degrees. I'm not mad at the weatherman for that. So that's good. I just hope that Notre Dame does not look too far ahead, because they can't afford to look too far ahead. Every time they play somebody, it's the other team's Super Bowl. So even though Florida State is 4-5, and I must say that a lot of Florida State's games have been very, very close. So there are a good 4-5. This is not a gimme. Just like when they play Syracuse the week after that, that's not a gimme. Syracuse is number 17 in the country, and that game's in New York. Then they've got Southern Cal, Notre Dame does at the end of the year. Southern Cal hates Notre Dame guts. And by the way, here's something else that Florida State is doing this weekend. Florida State is going to come out in all white, except for their gold helmets with an asterisk. All right? Florida State doesn't wear all white. Yeah, Penn State wears all white at home, but Florida State does not. And Florida State is wearing all white because the last time they wore all white in South Bend was the last time they came to South Bend. And it's the only other time they've been in South Bend since that 1993 game of the century that Notre Dame won. Okay, so the last time they were in South Bend since then was in 2003, and Florida State won 37-0. They were wearing all white, so they're wearing all white again. So, just saying, this is not necessarily a given, all right? But, I'll tell you, let's go back. Let's go back to 1993. That was a great experience. I literally spent the week in South Bend leading up to that game. Got a chance to visit relatives and got a chance to write daily stories for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I was a columnist back then for them, and wrote a story a day about some aspect of what was going on in South Bend for that huge game. And Notre Dame is used to games of the century. When I was growing up in South Bend in the 60s, you had that game in 1966 between Notre Dame and Michigan State that finished in a famous 10-10 tie, and Notre Dame won the national championship. So there you had that game of the century. You had the one in 1988. I was there at that one. That was Notre Dame against Miami. Bad Miami, not the good Miami of Ohio where I'm from. But that was that Miami team that was considered invincible. They came into South Bend ranked number 1. Okay, a huge game. And Notre Dame won 31-30. So then we get to this game of the century that was coming up in 1993, November, against Florida State, and they were considered so invincible that they were making fun of Notre Dame. I was walking around campus and I was encountering various Florida State fans and also Florida State players were doing the same thing. Newt Rockne, you guys heard of Newt Rockne? Newt Rockne, to this day, is the greatest college football coach of all time, coach at the University of Notre Dame. He's the one that started all the traditions from 1918 when he was head coach right through his plane crash in March of 1931. Newt Rockne is considered the guy in college football. Again, he's the one that was at George Gipp's bedside when George Gipp was dying, and George said, "Rock, when the odds are against the boys, just tell them to win one for the Gipper." Yeah, that was Newt Rockne. Okay, he was a great coach. Well, that Newt Rockne, you had Florida State players and fans back then in November 1993 calling him Rock Newtony and all kind of different names. They act as if they had not heard of the Golden Dome or Touchdown Jesus or the Grotto or any of these sacred places in Notre Dame land and South Bend. They had their fun. Okay, let them have their fun. Yeah, we didn't care. But the thing that was interesting about all this is that 5 years earlier, in that other game of the century I was telling you about, 1988, that was in October, a perfect October day, I might add. I was there at that game against Miami, the invincible Miami Hurricanes, the bad Miami, and that was a game in which it was back and forth, a tight game, a thriller, and then we come down to the last few seconds. Notre Dame's leading 31 to 30 after Florida State, or Miami rather, scores at the end of the game, and then they go for 2. And Pat Terrell is like an earth angel, comes out of nowhere for Notre Dame and knocks down the potential 2-point conversion that would have won the game, and Notre Dame wins, and they go on undefeated, and they win the national championship of 1988. Well, I'm saying that because in this particular game, in 1993, this particular game of the century, very similar stuff happened. But I'm getting ahead of the story. Now I'm getting ahead of the story. Let's go back to that week. The first person to interview Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz, by the way, was the head coach of Notre Dame back then. And you've got 4 Mount Rushmore coaches at Notre Dame, and they happen to be 4 of the greatest coaches in the history of college football. I told you number 1 is Newt Rockne. All right. Then you had Frank Leahy. Oh, Frank Leahy was a man. Yeah. 40s and 50s. There were like 3 or 4 seasons where they never lost. Okay. Then you had my guy, who was miniature god, Ara Parseghian. I'm bowing right now. That just a memory of the late Ara Parseghian who died last year. Ara Parseghian, he was my coach. That's during my lifetime. I mean, my mom used to dress us up in these certain Notre Dame sweaters because she said those are the sweaters that Ara's wearing down on the sidelines. So if they're good enough for Ara, they're good enough for us. All right. So Ara coaches Notre Dame from 1964 and to 1974, into the 74 season. Never lost more than 2 games in the season. Won 2 national championships. Easily could have won 4, but we got rooked out of a couple, as Notre Dame is wont to have done to it from time to time. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the next great Notre Dame coach, Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz came in 1986. And listen, folks, guess who did the first story on Lou Holtz at the University of Notre Dame? Yeah, I got my hand raised. I did. I was the first reporter to interview Lou Holtz at the University of Notre Dame in 1986. That was awesome. Okay. So, anyway, so it was that Lou Holtz. So here we are in 1993, this huge game, all this hype. You got ESPN coming to town. You know, you heard of Game Day, right? Game Day, up to this point, had always been done in the studio. And this is the first time ever that Game Day went on the road. This game was so big, okay? Lee Corso, that's when Lee Corso was in his prime. Lee Corso still pretty good, right? Not bad. He was in his prime back then. Lee Corso came. So, you know, you got Lee Corso and the whole gang coming to South Bend, Indiana at the end of the week to do their things. And prior to that, they're still, they're coming to South Bend and also going to Tallahassee, just interviewing all of the subjects that are going to be involved in this game. It was huge. Well, in the middle of this week, all right, the game's on Saturday, I get this call. I'm in South Bend from the sports information director who says that Lou Holtz is inviting me to dinner that Thursday. Barbecue. Yeah, Lou's going to have a barbecue. No coach does this. I mean, for any game, most of these coaches, once the season starts, I mean, they're in the bunker. They don't want to talk to anybody. All right, and if they do talk to somebody, it's an upset. Just required press conferences, and they don't even want to do that. So this is Lou Holtz for the biggest game of the century, the game of the century. That's what they call it. I am invited over to his house for a barbecue. Now get this. On Thursday. Let's see. Thursday, Friday. This is 2 days before the game. All right. A couple other reporters were invited too. His coaching staff was invited, and they were there. So it's basically me and a handful of other reporters, his coaching staff, his wife, Beth, maybe a neighbor or two. I mean, that was it. Thursday, we're over. Can you believe that? Now I'm telling you this because, number one, that was shocking. But number two, it was amazing. The food was tremendous, by the way. Okay, and the cookies, I like good cookies. Good cookies, good barbecue. But what was amazing was how relaxed and down to earth Lou was before the biggest game of his life. One of the biggest games in the history of college football. He was relaxed, just joking, talking to people, and just, giving me a tour of the house, of his game room, and all the mementos he's had through the years. But here's where it gets totally wonderfully bizarre. I was trying to think of the right way to put it. I still can't believe what I'm about to tell you, okay? So we get to the point in the evening where we're all invited into the family room. So we're all in the family room, and Lou and his wife, Beth, are sitting on the couch just relaxed and everything, and the TV set is on, and lo and behold, is ESPN. And it's what... I just have to laugh. I mean, on ESPN, on the screen is Lee Corso interviewing Bobby Bowden, the coach of Florida State. And Lee Corso is asking Bobby Bowden about Lou Holtz. Now, again, get this scene. We're all gathered around the couch in the family room, and here's Lou Holtz watching television, watching Lee Corso interview Bobby Bowden, and Bobby Bowden talking about Lou Holtz while Lou Holtz is sitting there on the couch. Oh, my gosh. This was unbelievable. And you know what? I'll tell you what, it was even more unbelievable. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to that Wednesday. So I get the call from John Heisler. John Heisler is the great sports information director at Notre Dame. He's been there for 1,000 years. Okay, and then I happened to go over to Notre Dame a little bit later on that day, and I'm talking to Lou Holtz, or rather John Heisler face-to-face. I said, hey, listen, I'm getting directions. I said, do you think that Lou would mind if I brought my video camera? And John said, no, sure, bring it. I was the only one that had a video camera. I got it on videotape. Can you believe that? So I'm there at Lou's house with the video camera, filming all of this. It was unbelievable. And I'm going to show you some of this on a Timeout with Terence later this week. So make sure that you pay attention because it's going to be true. It's going to be great. I'm going to show you some of this stuff. So we're sitting on the couch. I got the videotape going. And there is Lou and Beth at the couch watching Bobby Bowden talk about them.
The great Notre Dame rushing attack against a questionable Florida State rushing defense. Now, I'm very concerned about that, Lee, because, a lot of people say, well, y'all went up there against Michigan 2 years ago and just stopped their running game. Yeah, they run different than Notre Dame. They say, yeah, but you stopped Miami's running. Yeah, but they run different than Notre Dame. Notre Dame puts 2 of them big guys back there, not one. See, the other teams, they kind of stitch all over the field and hammer at you. Well, you can come in and stop that. But Notre Dame puts 2 big block runners back there and a big line of scrimmage that's good athletically. That's my biggest concern of them pounding us and us being 25, 30 pounds lighter, giving out of gas or something. And that bothers me. You're exactly 39 pounds lighter per man up front. So that would be a major factor. And I've played against Lou for the last 30 years. I know Lou. And I know his instincts. I know his temperament. I know Lou. He likes to hammer you. He likes to physically beat you. And he is going to try to physically beat Florida State. Now, I ain't saying he ain't going to cut some stuff loose on. He's going to cut some stuff loose. But I know this. He'll be jumping up there. He'll be eating that grass over on that side. Pounding us and knocking us out of there. What kind of guy is Drew? You guys should have dealing with him in attack. He is one of the most fierce competitors in the world. I told my coaches, Mike, I said, man, now look, I know Lou Hopes. Chuck Amano's on my staff. I said, he knows Lou Hopes. The rest of y'all probably don't. I said, he is the most fierce competitor we'll ever play against.
Wow. And that laughter you hear in the background, that's all of us laughing because you have Bobby Bowden making these faces, unintentionally while he's being interviewed by Lee Corso, and we just can't believe the faces. And we're also laughing because deep down inside, we can't believe what we're witnessing. I mean, how many times do you get a chance to see this? 2 great coaches, one watching the other talk about them. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So after that, we had dessert and everything, and then it's time to go. And then Lou just asked me, "Hey, you got the camera there? Let me say goodbye to you on the camera." So I gave somebody the camera, and Lou is thanking me for coming and everything. Well, as a matter of fact, instead of me telling you about it, this is what it sounded like at the end.
We're delighted to have you here.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure, Terry.
Same here.
Thank you for coming to dinner.
Okay.
Hope you'll come back.
So hope done well since this is the first time I talked to you.
That was a long time ago. And I followed you. I go through and I pick up the paper.
That could be good. Could have been. Thanks again.
Oh, Notre Dame played well, all right. They played extremely well. They were fighting right down to the end, Florida State, because Charlie Ward, that was the year that Charlie won the Heisman Trophy, and they drove him downfield, and they were going for the tying touchdown, and he throws it into the end zone, and it was knocked down by Sean Wooden. Oh, my goodness gracious, I got chills. I got chills because he knocked it down, but also got chills because it was deja vu all over again, as Yogi Berra would say, because just like Sean Wooden knocked down that pass, it reminded me of 5 years before. Remember, I just told you about that. Pat Terrell did the same thing against Miami. Of course, that kind of prevented the Miami knockdown prevented Miami from winning the game. This prevented Florida State from a potential game-tying extra point. But it's still the same. You kind of see the parallelism there. So anyway, they won the game. That Notre Dame. That was the next to the last game of the season. So Notre Dame jumps to number 1, and everybody's just waiting for the national championship Lou Holtz's second national championship in 5 years and all that sort of thing. But they had to get past this team called Boston College the next week. No worries. Boston College. All right, whatever. So I got to set this thing up. They just got through beating Florida State. So now they're 10-0. They beat Boston College the next week, and then they play in the bowl game. Hey, they've got this thing in the bag. So that the game that the day that they're playing Boston College Notre Dame, I've got to fly to, ironically, Tallahassee. Yeah, to see Florida State, the same Florida State that just lost to Notre Dame. I'm flying to cover the Florida State North Carolina State game, just to kind of see how Florida State is going to recover after this devastating loss. Okay, so the timing was such where I could see a little bit of the first half of the Notre Dame Boston College game. It was kind of a little bit closer than people thought, but yeah, I mean, it's Boston College. Notre Dame never loses to Boston College or any team of that ilk. So I'm flying to Tallahassee. Everything's fine. Get a rental-car, and I'm listening to the game on the radio a little bit. And at this point, I just turn off the game because, hey, they got this game in the bag. So I get to the stadium there in Tallahassee, Florida State, North Carolina State. Park the rental-car. Get out of the car, and then all of a sudden I just hear all of this screaming as if the earth had just collapsed. And I'm walking on the parking lot, and it's like the ground is shaking like an earthquake. I was getting a little nervous. What's going on? And then I noticed what it was. It was all of these Florida State fans tailgating, cheering their heads off. I'm like, oh my God. So all of a sudden, I felt my heart just drop down to the floor because I had a feeling that this was not good. So I ran up to one of the tailgaters and said, what's going on? And they said, it says Boston College is coming back. Oh my God. What? Coming back? What? It seems that the game had gotten tighter. So tight that Notre Dame at this point has got a 1-point lead in the final minute, and the clock is ticking, and Boston College is driving. All right? They're driving. So finally, it's down to the last few seconds, and Boston College, down by 1, attempts a 41-yard field goal. It was good. Not only was it good, the guy kicked it right toward touchdown Jesus. Right at the face. I just remember just dropping down to my knees, not for prayer, but just because I couldn't take it anymore. And I remember one of the guys that in the tailgate says, hey, are you okay, little buddy? I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. And the cheering just went on forever. And I remember finally making my way to the stadium and getting ready to get in the press elevator, and the elevator door opens, and a group of sports writers come out, and they're just slapping each other high fives, talking about, I can't wait to drop Notre Dame next week. People hate Notre Dame. So that was miserable. So I spent that entire game listening to the PA announcer says, and the score from South Bend, Notre Dame, blah, blah, blah. Boston College, blah, blah, blah. Blah! Screaming in the background, unbelievable. But here's the thing. So Notre Dame the next week plays in the Cotton Bowl. I was there, and they beat Texas A&M. So Notre Dame's got just one loss for the season. Florida State goes on and they win their bowl game. Okay, they've got one loss for the season. And they give the national championship to Florida State. Now, here's the thing. Notre Dame beat them head-to-head, but they still gave the national championship to Florida State. I say that because in 1988, remember I told you that Notre Dame won the national championship? The next year, Notre Dame was awesome again. They were 11-1, eventually 12-1 because they won the bowl game. The only loss that year was to bad Miami, all right? And then they come back in the bowl game, Notre Dame, they come back in the bowl game and they beat number 1 ranked Colorado. Notre Dame beats number 1 ranked Colorado in the Orange Bowl to finish 12-1, okay? Bad Miami wins this bowl game against Alabama, which was only ranked number 7. And they gave the national championship in 1989 to Miami, bad Miami, because, well, in head-to-head competition, Miami beat Notre Dame. Let's fast forward to 4 years. In head-to-head competition, Notre Dame beat Florida State, but they gave the national championship to Florida State. Anyway. Yeah, Notre Dame has a history of getting screwed, and it's been like that forever. I can go back even further than just the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. I mean, it happens all the time to Notre Dame. Yeah, Era Parsegians, first year in 1964. Okay, they should have won the national championship back then. But anyway, I digress. What Notre Dame's got to do right now is just take care of business. Take it one game at a time. You know, I just told you what happens whenever Notre Dame plays anybody, that other team plays out of its mind. So Florida State's going to play out of its mind this weekend. I don't care what that record is. So Notre Dame's going to have to match the intensity. They're going to have to play out of their minds. They're going to have to think of this song. This is called Hike, Notre Dame, Hike. This goes back to the days of New Rockne. New Rockne used to tell the boys, you know, we're going to go inside them, we're going to outside them, we're going to get them on the run, we're going to keep them on the run. They got to think Rockne. They got to think Leahy. They got to think Era. They got to think Uncle Lou. Well, now think about Brian Kelly, okay? Whatever. So hopefully next week we'll be talking after a Notre Dame victory. See you next week for more Tears' Take and a Notre Dame victory, hopefully.